She had a traumatic first birth, then a miscarriage. Then she built something to help others going through the same. Welcome back to the TrailBLAZER pod. I'm your host, Faye, and each week I bring you stories of Jewish women who are paving bold paths. This week, Toby Deutsch, founder of Gentle Beginnings, joins me. She's the mom who walked into her first birth terrified and walked out traumatized. The one who took a miscarriage and turned it into a research project on her own nervous system. And now the founder teaching other women how to rewire their brains for birth. Because 1 in 3 women describe theirs as traumatic, and she thinks that number is a system failure. Let's dive in. Oh, and hit follow and subscribe. You don't want to miss what's coming. Thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm great.
This is going to be interesting because we're both hosts. And, one time I did a podcast and I was the guest, and it was a really weird experience for me. So I'm excited for you to experience it. And then for anyone listening, Toby and I are cousins, and this is our first time actually talking face to face. We're like long lost cousins. We didn't know about each other. So I am so lucky to have the opportunity to get to know you at such a deep level for our first conversation. So thank you so much.
Of course. I'm so excited. It's amazing.
So let's go all the way back so that we can actually get to know you. How would you describe yourself as a little girl?
Okay, that's a really good question. Little Toby was very all over the place. She did not sit through school. She did not do well at all in school. And I was always very curious and thinking out of the box, which makes sense when you think about school. It's just very black and white and having to check off the boxes. I always wanted to ask bigger questions and explore color outside of the lines, if you will. And that was a little tough. Growing up, it wasn't easy feeling like I'm boxed into, I don't want to say the system, but school wasn't easy. I was very excited to just spread my wings and fly. Graduated. But I was I would describe myself as a curious child. I was very fun loving, but also I had a very serious side to myself. People would always describe me as like wise beyond my years, which is, it's interesting because at one point I reached an age and I finally feel like I am my age, because until a certain point I was always like way older than what I really was, like my biological age. So that was me. That was little Toby.
I wish we knew each other because we definitely share genetics, because I relate to so much of what you're saying.
Oh my God.
I also I feel like I age backwards, because now when I reach the age where I feel my age, now suddenly the weight of the world is off my shoulders and I get to actually just experience life as almost just living and breathing, versus when I was 15, I was like a 40-year-old. I had all the You get what I'm saying.
It feels peaceful now.
Yeah, exactly. Even though life is crazy, right? But when you have that sense of, oh, I'm aligned with my age and who I'm supposed to be, then everything gets a little bit easier and manageable,
for sure.
At least in the brain. So that's Toby as a little girl. What's Toby like today?
Toby today is, I'm going to say this, I know it's very cliche, but I am a mom and a wife, and that truly is, for myself, a very rewarding job. But I am also the founder of Gentle Beginnings. Gentle Beginnings is a company. It's an umbrella for a bunch of different offerings that I have available to women. And that is something that I'm really proud of and something that I pour my heart and soul into. I'm sure we're going to get into it a little bit deeper. But Toby today feels peaceful. Toby today feels, my age and happy to be where I am and just going with the flow and seeing what life brings my way.
I love that. So when you were, you were saying you were so excited to get out of school and spread your wings, and funny, my name is Faggy, and I also always said I need to fly. I'm a bird. It's just who I am. Did you exactly? Did you have did you envision something for yourself? You were saying you built this incredible business, but it's more than just a business. Did you know you're going to end up doing something for yourself? No. Okay.
No.
What was going through the mind?
So really, I always wanted to find something that is my passion and make that my career. But as we know, passion, what is a passion? A passion is a calling. And unless something doesn't call you, then it's not there. So I was searching for my calling. So straight out of school, I got, just a standard job. I worked as a bookkeeper and was so boring. Like numbers. I mean, we do not vibe, but interestingly enough, I did really well. At the job, meaning I did my job well, despite what my teachers told me in school. And this is something I want to share for any little girl that like is being told like you're never going to succeed and like in the workforce because you don't do well in school. Just because in school I did not care about succeeding, at work I did care. So I did really well there. And then after that, I transitioned to a different job where I worked with elderly. I was actually working in a home care. It was just a corporate job. I did that for 6 years. I loved it. I loved working with people. I'm a people person, but I really wanted something more. And I was constantly looking for like, what can I do? But nothing was calling my name until this did after a personal experience. And then it was like, oh, wow, I can't ignore this. Like I have to follow my dream. Yeah, it clicked. It definitely clicked.
Yeah.
Incredible.
And by the way, like I think it's similar for me, but also it's so important to think about like so many people never get that chance of like getting that calling. Like you were saying, it has to come to you. And it's amazing that your life experience brought you to something that feels so aligned with yourself. You did say, it was because your own experience that was the catalyst for everything that you created today. So do you mind sharing, a little bit of what your experience was like and like why it made you pause and say something needs to be done about this?
Definitely. So I'm going to try to make a long story short.
Okay.
But growing up, hearing about birth, wasn't really spoken about. I heard a lot about emergencies and how birth is really scary and birth is very dangerous. And I was dreading birth. Like I was so excited to be a mom when I got pregnant. I was just on a high, but I was freaking out about just considering the fact that I'm going to have to give birth to this human being. It felt very daunting. And of course, I carried all that fear into the birth room. And that birth turned out to be very typical standard first time birth. And unfortunately, for the standard, it was traumatic. I felt very disassociated. I had a very difficult postpartum, but I thought, okay, this is what people do, right? This is just the way that it is. So, just roll with the punches and go on. In between my first and my second birth, I had a miscarriage. That miscarriage, just led me down a path of, I had like severe anxiety. And that was something that was really difficult for me to just come face to face with. I want to feel good. I'm never a type of person that is okay with feeling sick. I just want to get up and go on. But this like anxiety forced me to slow down and take a look at my life. And I had to actually work on regulating my nervous system, on healing, on feeling better. So I started doing research and I started implementing different practices into my lifestyle, like meditation and movement and breathing, breath work. And I found myself becoming a whole new person, right? Little Toby, something I forgot to mention, was also very anxious. So I had that anxious tendency and that like exploded after the miscarriage, which was probably a combination of hormones, but also circumstantial. So then, I started doing more research and I read up on different things. I became fascinated with the whole concept of neuroplasticity, and that is that our brains can rewire and we are not our genetics. We're so much more than, who we are from when we're born. Like we can change as people. So then when I got pregnant again, I felt like I need to know more. Like this is not the same Toby that gave birth last time. Like I need to prepare in a whole new way. So I started researching and I started learning more and listening to a ton of podcasts, reading up on different studies and things like that. And I came to realize that the way that we give birth is so, so removed from the way that birth was intended to be, which is a very primal, natural thing that happens to a woman. And we're so grateful to have medical intervention. Like, I don't want to go back to the dark ages, but we need to have that balance of this is something really special. It's not just something like a woman going to the hospital, being a patient, putting on a hospital gown, getting an IV pricked into her, like it's so much bigger than that. So I had a really, really beautiful, redemptive second birth. and I ended up doing it unmedicated, and my postpartum was like night and day. It was so amazing, and I felt like I got all the benefits of the hormones like throughout labor. That sort of blocks when you have so much fear, because fear blocks oxytocin. Oxytocin is the love hormone, and then I mean, I could go into it, but this is not a good podcast. But the point is that like it changed me, and then I was a diehard fan. Like I'm like, everyone needs to know about this. And more women need to experience birth this way. And it's not only for the birth itself, but it's for how are they mothering? How are they being as women? Like, let's put everything aside. Let's not look at how they are as mothers and wives, but how are they to themselves? How do they talk to themselves? How do they feel about themselves? Are they feeling empowered? Are they feeling that they can tap into their intuition? Or are they constantly seeking outside validation? Like, it's so much bigger than birth. And, how are they regulating, right? Nervous system. How are they just being as people, human beings? So that's when I knew like I need to do something about this. Like more people need to know about this. And I couldn't stop. And that was the start of my story, basically.
It's so cool because we started with you saying you were a very curious kid, and always trying to find, like, you're always outside of the box a little bit. And I feel like that part is what brought you here, because after your first birth and after your miscarriage and all the anxiety, you're like, your curiosity is like, wait, there has to be a way. And so like, I feel like not many people would, I think people just give in to their circumstances, right? Like they surrender and they'd be like, hey, I just have really hard births and traumatic experiences, and like, I'm just gonna go with it. And I think because of your curiosity that you mentioned before, we're like, there has to be something else.
There has to be another way.
There has to be another way. But my question of founders and business owners and people that create anything is always, yes, you experience something, or yes, you notice the problem, but so many of us experience things and notice the problem, and yet majority of people don't end up creating or doing something about it for other people. So what gave you the bravery to start something beyond just helping yourself?
So I really did it scared. It wasn't easy, but I finally felt that calling. I finally felt like something just speaking to me, and I couldn't stay quiet. And I knew that if I'm not going to do it, then no one else will. Thankfully we have so many resources in our community, and we have lots of birth education classes and doulas and things like that, but no one was talking about birth as it relates to your nervous system. And it's so much bigger than what is happening in your body and how much you dilate. Like it's such a big picture. And I was like, I can't stay quiet. Like more women need to know about this. It didn't come easy. Like it did not, like the last thing I would say was like, oh, it was natural. I was so confident. Confidence was like the farthest thing. Like it was not in my vicinity at all. I did it scared, and I knew, because I understood neuroscience, that the more I do it, the more my brain will become comfortable with this. And that if I keep going, I will strengthen that neural pathway of confidence and security. And that's what kept me going. So all the tools that I teach women were the tools that I implemented while I was building that brand, while I built my, I guess, I don't know if I can say like, legacy, because it's, but when I build Gentle Beginnings, that is what I held on to, all the tools that I preach.
That's so cool. It's so cool that you got to practice what you preach,
like
not everyone does that. I think that's amazing. And that's like, I love the part about confidence was so far and so not even in your vocabulary. And I think something I always say that I had to learn is like, confidence is the output. It's the result. It's never like the input, right? You can't start with confidence. It's not how it works. It's like repetition and iteration. And then eventually you're like, oh, I actually know what I'm doing and I feel good about it. And here it is. Yeah. And it's like almost, it feels overnight, but it's this humongous process that it takes to get there.
It's a long process.
It takes a long time. So before I start asking you questions, let's just give us a little bit of paint us a picture of what Gentle Beginnings is and what it offers.
Sure. So as I said, Gentle Beginnings is an umbrella for many different offerings that I have available. So the first offering is the Brain Body Birth course. The Brain Body Birth course is an online self-paced birth education program. And the way that I built that program is that it targets all the different little puzzle pieces that need to come together for a mother to truly feel prepared, mind, body, and soul. So the first module is mindset mastery. Mindset mastery focuses on neuroscience and regulating your nervous system. A regulated nervous system will affect how everything else goes, because as we know, birth can be unpredictable, but if a mom is in a good headspace, then she can handle whatever comes her way. So part of that is doing mindfulness, learning about neuroplasticity, and a really, really cool part about neuroplasticity, and this is something that excites me every time I talk about it, is that when a woman is pregnant, she has a very unique window where she can ramp up that neuroplasticity really fast because her brain is going through so many changes. Then if she starts doing what we call brain training, which is different types of practices to help with, rewiring your brain, then for, let's say, a regular person, like, someone that is not pregnant, that does these practices, it will take approximately 8 to 10 weeks until we see noticeable changes in the brain, if we do like a brain scan before and after. But if we look at a woman that is pregnant, if she's consistent with her practice, it takes approximately 8 to 10 days because her brain is so malleable. I know, it's so cool. So I've seen it so many times, how women come in and they're so like anxious, and then by the next week when I used to do the in-person classes, when I met them the next week, I was like looking at a whole new person, because the women that took it seriously, like, you were able to see changes really, really quickly.
That's so cool.
So that's mindset mastery. Then we have physiology, really understanding what's happening in your body. Not only like, okay, this is how your cervix dilates, but what's happening in your uterus, what's happening in your cervix, what's happening in your pelvis, how to get your baby into an optimal position, right? Like really going into how to reduce your risk of tearing. All these things that sometimes we don't talk about, right? So it's all very much
usually don't.
Yeah, usually don't. And the third lesson, and this is very important, is advocacy. Learning about the different interventions that will be offered to you in the hospital and the evidence on all these interventions. So everything, like, I don't spew bias. Like, everything is evidence-based. I have all the research linked. Everyone can, search it and look it up for themselves. I encourage them to look at the research, but think like, for example, electronic fetal monitoring or, vaginal exams or different things. Like, what is the risks? What are the benefits? Are there any alternatives? Do I really need to do it? What will this cause me to have more interventions that can possibly lead to worse outcomes, right? Can I say no? And yes, you can say no. And then when can I say yes? Because sometimes there's a time and place where an intervention can be a solution. We talk about C-sections, because instead of like avoiding that whole conversation, like, hey, it's never going to happen. What happens if it does happen? How can we make it a better experience for you? So really talking about all the different medical interventions in our modern day and age. And then finally, and most importantly, is postpartum. How are we setting you up for a good postpartum? And with postpartum, I'm very intentional that it's not just about like, what products can you use to heal better, but how are we going to heal you mind, body, and soul? How are we closing you up? You're now this open vessel. You just gave birth, and that allows a lot of like, I would say, just cold energy to seep in. And we see it with, physically, like constipation and things like that, but also, women feeling very disassociated, disconnected. So we're going back to how our grandmothers did it, right? We're bringing back the village. How are we setting you up with a support system, right? Just like we write a birth plan. What's your postpartum plan? Nutrition, right? How are we going to target the different depletions that can happen in postpartum? And finally, what happens if there is an issue, right? What happens if you're not feeling yourself? It's after 2 weeks and you're still feeling really, really not okay. Knowing that sometimes it's okay to not feel okay, and knowing that there is help out there, and postpartum depression, anxiety is highly treatable. God forbid psychosis also, like if we, catch it early, then you start feeling better faster. So instead of just like shoving it in the closet and pretending it's not there, let's start getting you help sooner. So resources where you can start reaching out and start getting better. So That is brain body birth. That is one of the
Wow.
offerings. It's a lot. Yeah.
It's amazing how it's like really 360.
Yes. Yeah. I tried to, I really wanted to just cover everything. And also in a way that doesn't overwhelm mothers. Like, I don't want to give you any information that you don't need. Just what do you need to know and can you practically take into the birth room? And one of the things that is the most practical is the mindset work that you do before. Because if you're just taking in information, that's just information. But when you regulate your body, it allows all the information to stay in there. And then the next thing that I offer is a growing, beautiful WhatsApp community where I have women, and either they're pregnant or they're just, maybe they want to get pregnant or they just love learning about birth. We have some labor and delivery nurses on there. We have some midwives, some doulas, just people in the birth field, or just women. And that's what I want. I want women and girls to start feeling more like it's not this taboo subject. And in that WhatsApp community, I just, I give some educational, content and videos, Q&As. We do polls and things like that. It's a closed for, like, basically I'm the only one that can write on there. So no one's getting flooded with like, where can I get like a stroller or whatever? Like, it's strictly educational, like we're not flooding your inbox. And that's been really nice. And more recently, I launched the Gentle Beginnings podcast, which is where women come on and share their birth stories and more content and more education. The goal for everything, like the bottom line for Gentle Beginnings, is that women should feel more empowered. They should feel more connected to themselves. They should feel more regulated and confident in themselves and in their choices, whatever that may be.
I've not given birth. I've never been pregnant, and it's one of the scariest things in my brain. And in my brain, I'm like, no, I'll be fine because now I'll just do Gentle Beginnings and I'll take the course. Like that's what I'll do. I'm good. But yeah, it's a very scary thing, and it's also like you're saying, nobody talks about it. I do want to pull out one thing you said there for people who, haven't given birth or have never been pregnant. You said that. And most importantly, the postpartum phase. Why is that? Like, why did you choose most importantly for that?
Oh, okay. So, when we look at the statistics in the United States, we have the worst stats for all the developed countries when it comes to maternal mortality rates. And one of the leading causes for that number is, we're going to get a little dark here. This is not something that I'm putting out on my podcast. This is more for women that are maybe not even pregnant. So trigger warning, but one of the leading causes is mental health. So suicide and overdose. And a big contributing factor is the traumatic birth experiences that women have. 1 in 3 women will describe their births as traumatic, which is crazy. It's not okay. And we need to take a deeper look into this and say, why is this happening? Right? We are living in a very, we have all this modern intervention available. We need to ask, this question, like, why are we experiencing so much trauma in birth? And why are we seeing this number when it comes to maternal mortality rates? And a lot of it comes back to our system. Our system is really broken when it comes to supporting mothers. So, women give birth and then they're just expected to bounce back. They're expected to go to their 6-week appointment, maybe get birth control and just a clean bill of health and say, okay, now you can go back and do exercise and have sex and you're good, right? But something major just happened and she just gave birth to a human being. And there are so many things that are just haywire, right? Her hormones, are out of whack, right? That was like a tongue twister. And she's, maybe not sleeping very well at night. Maybe she's getting very well-meaning people are sending donuts and ice cream, but really what she needs is nourishing foods that will help support her. So we're seeing lots of cases of postpartum mood disorders. There's also a concept of perinatal mood disorders, which can be anywhere in, the perinatal phase, which is prenatal when you're pregnant or postpartum. But a lot of it can be contributed to the care that women receive postpartum. So I want to see how we can stack the odds in your favor of you having a better postpartum. A lot of it will be, how was your birth, right? If you had a good birth experience, that will influence how you feel in postpartum. So that's what we focus on in the first part of the course. But what else can we do to help you feel better? How can we help you come back to your family healthy and whole? Not just, okay, like, let's just bounce back, right? We see these videos of women like in heels and like just all dressed up and they're pumping because, you know, it gives this like relatable factor, but like, you should be in bed right now or not. Maybe you don't feel like being in bed, but you should be nourishing yourself in some way, in some capacity. So this is something that people don't even realize. They think, oh, this is okay. You know, like this is the American culture. We just go back to the way it was. And it's not. Like, you're a whole new person. You were, you were a woman and now you became a mother, and you need to find yourself in that space. And there's no just pretending that that didn't happen, because when we shove it under the rug, it just, different issues come up. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
I don't know if it does, but I think it's a very important part of it, because the 40 days after birth it's so influential that if you take care of yourself properly in those 40 days, there's the saying in Ayurvedic medicine that if you heal for yourself properly in the 40 days postpartum, you can influence the next 40 years of your life. And then if you don't care for yourself, then the opposite is true as well. So it's a very potent time. So let's make the most of it.
Thank you for explaining that. It's just when you said it, I was like, interesting that she focused on that specifically. Yeah. And you're right. When I started hearing about postpartum, like women experiencing it, it was in my 20s. And I was like, oh my God, like if I would have had a baby earlier on, I never would have known this existed. I never would have known to look out for it. And then you think you're crazy and you're all alone. So I thank you for sharing that. You did mention it's something that isn't talked about, and a lot of the stuff isn't talked about. And you do talk about birth trauma being something that women carry silently. And so I'm curious, having this community and talking to these women, 2 questions. One, why do you think we don't talk about it? And what does carrying this alone do to a woman?
Wow. So the first question is why we don't talk about it. I think that people are afraid to talk about things that they can't control or fix, right? We want to help everyone. We want to save everyone. And some things we cannot save everyone from, and they have to walk that journey themselves. I think that's maybe one part of it. Maybe people carry shame, like they did something wrong. Like maybe it was their fault that they experienced this. Trauma happens when we feel like we lost control in some way. When we look at trauma in all different forms, whether it's, physical or sexual or birth trauma, usually it's because someone felt like they lost control and they couldn't do anything and something happened to them. Yeah. So usually there's a certain aspect of shame, like I should have done something, I should have spoken up, I should have fought, but as we know, like when you're in a very vulnerable state, that's not your place, right? Especially in birth. You shouldn't have to be fighting for yourself when you give birth to your baby. So maybe that's another part of why women don't talk about birth trauma. But we're stopping that now. There's more awareness, and I'm definitely like sounding the alarm, and we have a growing community of women, and the more I talk, the more women open up, and I get messages all the time of like, wow, that was me, and that was so painful, and finally I feel like someone's acknowledging it, and I can see that other women also went through that. So the second part of your question, if you can just repeat it, because I think that I forgot.
What do you think? So, women go through these, first of all, that was a great response, but when women go through traumatic births, they're already dealing with the trauma, and then they deal with the trauma of having to hide the trauma almost, right?
Yeah.
Like, how do you think it plays out, having the extra burden of...
So, definitely, like we said, there's so much shame, and that amplifies the shame. Isolation, right? Feeling so alone, and it's so hard to feel alone. And that can just spiral into anxiety, into depression, into hopelessness. I was just talking to a woman, and she was sharing her postpartum story for the first time. Like, she never said it out loud, and she was crying. She's like, I never talk about this part because the birth was so beautiful. I didn't want to talk about the postpartum. And then as it's coming up, it's like she felt this like great release. Now, full disclosure, I am not a trauma therapist. Like as part of my training, I am trauma informed. And I have that knowledge and, some education on it, but I cannot help, I'm not there in the capacity of a therapist, and there's a place for that. And I have some amazing resources for women that, do want to connect with someone that can help them with that. It's available. But one thing that we know is that the more we stuff things down, the more we just block it and we don't want to bring it up, it festers, right? So just letting it come out is just such a relief. Of course, we need to know where we can talk about our trauma, because sometimes we see the opposite side of the spectrum where women will trauma dump. Especially on pregnant women, right? Oh, you're pregnant. Do you want to hear my birth story? It was traumatic. It was the worst thing that ever happened to me. So we need to find the right place where we can talk about that. And that can be either in therapy or with someone that is not pregnant and has the capacity to listen, a sister, a friend, right? We need women. Women need other women. We need sisterhood. We need a village we need to hold each other up, right? So it can feel very isolating. It can feel very alone if you don't talk about it, and it can spiral into a much bigger issue for sure.
Yeah. Do you think that there's a kind of unique way to handle these conversations, or, anything that you're doing in the Jewish community versus not? Like, does culture play a role here?
So maybe for other people, but not for me. I truly think that my biggest pet peeve is how little we think women understand, right? Women are so smart. They get nuance. If you're old enough to give birth to your baby, you're old enough to hear about birth control. You're old enough to learn about birth trauma. It applies to everything. I work with, with all different kinds of people from all different kinds of cultures, but definitely the majority of my clientele are women in the, Orthodox Jewish community, the Frum community, and I love them, right? They're my tribe. Like, I know them, right? And I connect with them. I relate to them. And I think one of the reasons, and I'm not trying to like toot my own horn here, but one of the reasons why I feel so connected to women, I think that women, like being part of the community, part of the gentle birth community, is that there's no such word as like, we can say this and we're gonna I don't talk fluff. Like everything is so real, and women deserve that. I truly think women deserve that. Like we're done. Like it's 2026, it's about time we talk openly.
100%. 100%. It's very refreshing to see it, and it's kind of bizarre to me that it still stands out as like unique that you're talking about this, because it's like, why aren't we all saying, you were saying earlier, like these words, and you're like, I'm coming on here and I'm like, yeah, because we all should, but it's still somehow like this, like it stands out that not everyone is.
Yeah.
And it is 2026,
Right.
we're all on Instagram. Like we all see it. We might as well all be talking about it, right? Like it's not.
And I also think that maybe I'm not right for some women, right? And that's why there are other resources. There are other people that they can work with. I'm not going to be right for everyone, but the people that I do work with, I love them, and I respect them enough to talk openly to them about whatever it is. We talk about, let's say, for example, pelvic floor health is a big thing when it comes to birth.
That. So you keep saying like your community, and obviously you explained that you have this WhatsApp community. Why was it important for you to kind of have this component rather than just giving the course and everyone kind of doing it self-paced?
Okay, this is a good question. So I wanted to get back to what I actually love doing, and that is connecting with women and educating, because it's so much more than a job for me. I found that Instagram was this big, dark, deep sinkhole that if I would post content, it would just get lost in the big, algorithm.
That's how it goes. Yes.
Yeah. And I also felt like I was competing with so many different accounts. Not that it's competition, but like my content got lost.
Yeah.
And I didn't love Instagram. And then I also wanted to just change the business structure. Instead of teaching I used to teach like every single night of the week. It was so much, and giving over the same content again and again can feel like, for me, it became a lot. And there were so many women that reached out to me, and let's say they couldn't afford to do like an in-person class or, a virtual class. So I wanted to make this more accessible to women. I knew the only way to do that is to put it online and do it in a self-paced form. So once I had that out, I still wanted to connect with women. I still wanted to have that community, because that really was how should I say, that was the foundation of, like, I wanted to educate women and connect with women. So I feel like I have that in the gentle birth community, that the gentle beginnings community is that we're all there together. And it's definitely like women can feel less alone there, and we have a little bit of a village,
Yeah. I think it speaks to everything we were talking about until now, of like making sure you don't think you're crazy and you're the only one going through something, and having the village, like you're saying, part of it is understanding what resources do you need, going back to what it used to be like, right? So it totally aligns with everything you're saying so far.
Sure.
You did say it's a lot, and so I want to ask you this question. First of all, how do you feel about the word balance?
So important. Did not come naturally to me. And definitely, I think over the years, I found that balance. The second I made the decision, I think this might be controversial, but I think people are becoming more like open-minded. But the second I made the decision to not completely get off Instagram, but pour my resources, pour my education, my content into different platforms, where from growing my email following, different things like that, I felt this huge sense of relief. I felt like I was able to be more present for my family, which is my number one priority. I never want to be that mom that has, helps the whole world, but then her children will say, oh, but she was like a horrible mother, like that. I don't want to be that person. So for me, this was very important. So I felt like once I took a step back from Instagram, I was able to just focus on the other things that didn't require me to post every day on Thursday at 4 p.m. because that's when everyone is active, and, scheduling content and things like that. I was finally able to take a deep breath and listen to my own thoughts, and come back in touch with Toby and like hear, oh, what do I actually want? And find that balance. But it's not easy. It's definitely a daily struggle, I think.
When you say it didn't come naturally to you, what do you mean? What do you mean by that?
So I would go, like, I would seesaw. Like, I would go like all out with like posting, and then being like, okay, this is not healthy. Like, I need to just take a step back, and then I would drop everything, and
like extremes.
Correct. So different, polar opposites. But once I was able to just breathe and see, okay, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Then I was able to think more clearly and, I don't know, operate better, I think. So
yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I like that you said that you prefaced it with you weren't so good, because a lot of women come on here and they say like, it's so important and this is how I do it. But like, what does the other side look like? Right. And it's like, I think sometimes really passionate people go through that, right? They go all in and they do everything. And then you crash and you do nothing. And it's like, and some people call it integration. Some people call it balance, but I think everyone's talking about that same mechanism of finding a way where you're not on the opposite ends of the spectrum.
Right. I think it's only normal when you start something new that it's unknown territory. You're still finding yourself. And I was talking to, one of my mentors, and she was explaining it as like going into a big ocean, and then you walk in and there's this big wave that crashes over you, and you just want to like run back in, but then you push a little bit more, and then you get another wave and another wave until you find yourself deep in the water, and you're like, how did I even get here? But you need to get those initial waves, you need to feel like that. We say
punch in the face.
Correct. You need to get touched a little bit to be like, okay, what is happening? Yeah. But that's growth. That's how growth, happens. Yeah. It doesn't happen overnight.
Exactly. Same thing as the confidence conversation we had earlier.
For sure. Yeah. One day at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Have you ever, I mean, you're a business owner, right? Like that's you're doing all these amazing
It's
things and
so
you're helping so many
weird
people.
to be to hear that, but technically,
Right. That's why I'm like, really, you are, right? So
yeah.
did you ever find yourself wanting to quit or like this is so hard? Because
Oh yeah.
it is so hard. And if so, first of all, how did you deal with those feelings? Because I know a lot of people they're like they want to quit and they're like, why do I feel this? Again, like feeling the guilt of feeling the guilt or like
Yeah.
feeling the guilt of feeling the feelings. And then also like what made you continue?
Okay. So this is something that in the beginning I had this passion and I knew I needed to get it out there. But like we said, the confidence wasn't there. I wish it was. I had days where I felt so confident and then someone would make a stupid comment
Yeah.
because again, I'm doing something that's so like different.
Yeah.
It's so fringe, like just become like an interior designer or cut some wigs or put on makeup, become a makeup artist. But no, I'm going to like tell women.
Because that's not you. You explained that
Yeah,
from very little Toby, you know?
correct. But I think I had someone would make a comment and automatically I would like be flooded with so much doubt and insecurity. I would crumble and then I would have to just put myself back together and reevaluate like what do I actually want. So I think the biggest thing that was driving me to feel like I want to give this up is that insecurity, the lack of confidence that can I do this? Who do I think I am? Like I'm so young. I'm not like this bubby that, has like given birth to 17 children, like I'm just this, little me. But I also have, there's something in me, it's a blessing and a curse, and that is that I have a fear of failure. And I needed to prove to myself and I needed to prove to all my haters that I'm going to make it and I'm going to do this. So every time someone would doubt me, I would feel just insecurity, but then they would go on the list. I know this can be maybe it's
I
so
love it.
petty.
I love
It's
it.
so petty. It's maybe so mature, but they would go on the list of, okay, I'm going to show them and she's going to see. And, this one's going to see that list grew. And I'm very proud to say that, oh my gosh, I proved them wrong.
You showed them.
So, what kept me going is just that fear of failure, but also, there were so that was one thing, like the insecurity, but also there were moments, and I want everyone to know that it's okay. Let's say if you have a passion, if you're starting something because you have such a passion for it, and then you actually have to do the work so that you can do your passion. But work is hard. Work is not easy. So it's not like, okay, it's just going to be like, like nothing, like I had this brainstorm and now I'm telling the whole world about it and I'm feeling so great about myself. You have to do the nitty gritty of building it brick by brick. And that takes work. And when you work really hard, your brain doesn't have the capacity to tap into the passion because it's a different part of your brain, right? You're working hard now. You can't really focus on the fun, on the joy. So I had to keep reminding myself that even though I'm not feeling this passion right now, because there were moments where I was like, do I actually care so much about birth? Like, or is it just something like I brainwashed myself into thinking?
You were gaslighting yourself.
I was gaslighting myself essentially that but really I was just building something really big. And then I kept reminding myself that, again, going back to understanding how the brain works, that right now I can't be in that part of pleasure, right? Right now I'm focusing on executive functioning, building, right? In that adult part of my brain. And then once that business will be established, once I am deep in the water and I, push through all of those waves, the passion will come back. And it did. So if you have something going well for you, meaning if you have something that you really care about deeply, just know it's okay if there will be moments that you're going to doubt yourself if you actually want to do it. It's okay. Just keep going. And that's what I did. So
you explained that so well. Wow. I'm mind blown. I don't think I've ever had anyone explain it in that way. And I think the way you talk about like neuroscience and the way our brains work really helps reframe, because a lot of us don't understand the mechanisms and like why certain things are happening, and so it becomes very overwhelming. There are so many times where you just like want to lay on the floor and stare at the ceiling, and then it makes you feel so, I'm going to use this word, crappy about yourself. But then you understand, oh, I just spent 2 weeks taking in so much information that now my brain needs, it's like you have to sleep, right? It's the same idea. Once you understand exactly what you're saying, like now you're in adult mode activated, like there is no space. There's physically no space for the creativity. I think we can be a lot more like kind to ourselves and understand like it's just part of the process.
Yeah.
But we don't always understand that. So wow, thank you so much for explaining that. I think that's going to be really helpful to so many people listening. But I want to ask you now, with everything you know and all these women that you're talking to and all the knowledge you've gained, if you had to sit in a room with Toby, who was going through her first pregnancy and birth and postpartum, like what would be like the one thing you would say to her?
I would tell her that it's okay and that it's going to pass and that she should be so kind to herself because she just did something huge and she didn't fail. And it will get better. It will get better. We don't stay stuck. Sometimes it feels like this is the rest of our life, but it's just a bad day. It's not a bad life. So take it day by day. And yeah, one day you'll be really, really proud of how far you've come.
Do you think she'd be shocked at where you are today?
Yes, I think she would be very shocked. It took a lot of, I'm still like, I think there was like one question that I stood out. I was like looking through the questions that you were going to ask me, and you put in one question of like, when did you feel like you've arrived or something?
Yeah.
And I think for me, it was when someone asked me, "Oh, what do you do?" And I was so confident and like so peaceful. This inner peace of like, this is what I do. This is who I am, and I love it. And it's okay. Some days I feel more passionate. Some days I feel less passionate. But this is my life right now, and I'm truly like. I love it. I'm so like no insecurity.
That's so
it can happen.
That's so beautiful. Toby, I'm so proud to be your cousin that I just got to know. And thank you so much for being the person who's like brave enough to say the things the way it is. And for, instead of just helping yourself, like being courageous enough to go and help other people and proving all those haters wrong. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on here. It's such a pleasure talking to you and getting to know you.
Yes, same. Thank you so much for having me.